Hey, it's John. Welcome back to the show, and welcome back to the latest edition of the Album War. The premise of this series is to talk about two artists or bands which made an album with the same title. Regardless of era, regardless of genre, I will talk about these two albums, what I like about them, what I may not be so crazy about with them, and I will determine the winner of the album war. But today we have a twist. The name of this show is Mad Season. As the late great Ed Daring would say, let's meet the principals. First album I'm going to talk about today was by a supergroup, or as my friend Grant Arthur would say, a one and done. This is Mad Season with their album Above. This was released in March 1995 on Columbia Records. This would go gold in the United States, and it would have lesser success in Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom. It would give us one huge hard rock radio hit that is aged like a fine wine. The other band I'm going to talk about today was coming off an album that sold well over 10 million copies in the United States. I am talking about Matchbox 20 with their second album, which is called Mad Season, released in May 2000 on Atlantic Records. This would become a number 3 album in the United States and Canada, and a number 1 album in Australia. This album would give the band 2 top 5 hit singles, including, to this day, their only number 1 single in the United States. So we have a different twist on the album war here today. I would like to thank my friend Davey Cretin, who I was in a conversation with when I thought of this idea, and I said, must be an album war here. He concurred. Check out Cretin Classics to see Davey and the wonderful work that he does. Also, check out Grant's Rock Warehouse and Rock Daydream Nation, where he does tons of work. Great work. Here's the Grant's Rock Warehouse Psychedelic Breakfast hoodie. You can get this at TeePublic. Now let's talk about the albums today. We're going to go chronologically as usual. We're going to talk about Mad Season's Above. This was a super group from the grunge era of the 1990s. The musicians on this album are Lane Staley on vocals and rhythm guitar. You know him best from Alice in Chains. Mike McCready on lead, rhythm, and acoustic guitars. You know him best for his work with Pearl Jam. Barrett Martin on drums, percussion, double bass, cello, marimba, and vibraphone. You best know him from his work with Screaming Trees. And John Baker Saunders on bass guitar. He was more of a blues guitar player, best known for playing with Hubert Sumlin. Additional singers and musicians on the album: Mark Lanigan, vocals on I'm Above and Long Gone Day. He was the singer and main songwriter in Screaming Trees. And Skerrick on saxophone on Long Gone Day. Lane Staley, John Baker Saunders, Mark Lanigan are no longer with us. There was going to be a second album, but it was never released, although we did get some bonus tracks on the deluxe version of this album Above. Now, this is not a grunge album. This has more of a 70s feel in its execution. Grunge, more often than not, was driven by great guitar riffs. This is driven more by Lane Staley's vocal melodies. The recording on here is sublime. It has a timeless production provided by Brett Eliason and Mad Season. 10 tracks, 55 minutes. This plays well as a piece. It's not about hit singles. This is best heard in one sitting, and it sounds great. The opening track is Wake Up, which is a very tranquil opener. One of several songs on here where it's Lane providing that vocal melody and the musicians are working off of that vocal melody. This is very, very mellow. And it leads into X-Ray Mind, where it's that groove and that vocal melody, which is really carrying the day. Lane is singing over the groove, and those guitars are not playing riffs. And Mike McCready's work on here is outstanding. I'll get more into that in a little bit. His riffs and his solo on here is wonderful. Barrett on this song and throughout the album, he's throwing in a lot of nice drum fills that really add to the proceedings. Another strong track. River of Deceit, in my humble opinion, is a 90s classic. And if you hear this to this day, it still sounds fresh. It still sounds awesome. Aged like a fine wine. Again, Lane's vocal is what's driving this piece, and his vocal performance on here really, really cuts through the bone. But what also works on here is those melodic guitar lines from Mike, which are very tranquil and they're perfect for providing the right mood. Again, it's not a song carried on riffs. It's Lane and Mike working together, and the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. The pre-chorus on here is wonderful. The vibe is fantastic. It never becomes a rocker. It just stays in that mellow vein the whole time. It's just a wonderfully executed song. My favorite song on the album, it's a fantastic track. I'm Above, a little more grunge because now you got some riffs, which you typically hear in the bands that I had mentioned before. But again, it's about the space. You got Mike playing off that vocal melody again. The pre-chorus sounds very early 70s rock. And when I'm talking 70s here, you got songs on here that remind you a little bit of Zeppelin, Uriah Heep, in the execution sometimes with the mood, a little bit of Pink Floyd, not as spacey as Pink Floyd, obviously. But it does sound like it has a 90s aesthetic, but it's about creating that right mood. And this song works very well. Artificial Red is a slow blues, but not your typical blues, because you're not getting these, you're not having the rhythm section playing that same beat over and over. They're playing a beat, but they're playing it a lot slower. Again, we're working off of Lane's vocal melody here. He got some nice call and response from Mike McCready and Lane on here. Let me get into Mike McCready here. Mike McCready sounds like he's let loose on this album because he and Stone Gossard are more often than not playing those riffs that are carrying those songs in Pearl Jam. Here he's getting a chance to really stretch out, and you hear more of his distinct style. He has a great use of mood and space. He knows when to play and when not to play. He plays for the song. My friend Joe Becht, who a lot of you know as Joe B, champions Mike McCready's playing. And I agree completely with Joe. Mike McCready is a guitar player we don't hear enough about. He is a wonderful player, and his performance on this album is always in a pocket, very strong. Very, very cool tune here, but again, it's not your typical blues. It's much, much slower. You're waiting for something big to happen. It's about the anticipation, but it never really happens. You just wait. It's really cool tune. Lifeless Dead sounds like Ozzy Sabbath, early 70s Ozzy Sabbath in its riff and its groove. The solo doesn't sound like Tony Iommi. The riff doesn't really have that exact Sabbath feel, but it reminds you of Sabbath. Very cool tune. It's a little draggy compared to the first 5 that we've heard, but I still like it a lot. I Don't Know Anything was the other song that hit rock radio off of this album. This sounds the most like Alice in Chains with those guitar lines and Lane's delivery. It's a cool track. It a little plodding at times, but I dig it. Lifeless Den and I Don't Know Anything are probably my least favorite songs, but I still dig them. Long Gone Day, we got Mark Lanigan providing the lead vocal more often than not. He's starting the lead vocal on here. A lot of times Lane's harmonizing with him. Interesting track in the fact that it has a very 60s Baroque feel in its execution, those mellow guitars, and the vibes played by Barrett. And that sax from Skerritt coming in a couple times. It feels very 1966. The production doesn't feel 66, but in its execution, it feels that way. It's a great track. It adds to this album that mood. November Hotel is the instrumental, 7 minutes. Slow burn in the beginning, and then when those drums kick in, it just becomes this tribal cacophony. That's really cool. And you get 4 minutes of Mike McCready going off. And he's doing tons of cool stuff with his wah-wah pedal. He's going Guitar Hero for a lot of it, although he's not shredding. He's playing a lot more notes than usual, though. But it is a wonderful track. Very driving. Starts slow and quiet, ends slow and quiet. In the middle, you get this Mike McCready goodness. Works very well. All Alone. Now we're ending quiet, like we started. Very sparse lyrically. In its execution, it feels like the verses on Thank You by Led Zeppelin. And I mean that as a compliment. Perfect way to end this album, which has so much great use of space. The songs are well crafted. It's all about mood, but as a piece, it works very, very well. This is Mad Seasons Above from 1995. Now, let's talk about Matchbox 20's second album, Mad Season. The musicians on this album are Rob Thomas on lead vocals, piano and rhythm guitar, Kyle Cook on lead guitar and backing vocals, Adam Gaynor on rhythm guitar and backing vocals, Brian Yale on bass guitar, Paul Duquette on drums, and acoustic guitar on the song Stop. This album is aesthetically, sonically, totally different from Mad Seasons Above. How? Well, the production's a lot more noisy. It has that late 90s, 2000s production where you have a lot of things going on, a lot more instruments than when you heard Yourself or Someone Like You. Most of those songs were led by those wonderful guitars. They're highly accessible. This is accessible a lot of the time, but you got a lot of different instruments here. You got a lot of horns. You got more acoustic guitars. You got more strings. You got an orchestra on a couple tracks. A lot more backing vocals, which don't sound like they were provided by the band. Matt Serletic produced this album, just like he produced the debut, but it has a different sound. It doesn't rock as hard. Lyrically, it's a more mature album. That is very apparent. It's a more mature album, but it doesn't have the great hooks that you had on the debut. Most of the time, anyway. There are great songs on here. There are outside instruments that are providing the best moments of some of these songs. Let's get into the tracks. Angry starts out very jangly. Then it leads into a wonderful chorus. Choruses on here, for the most part, are very, very strong. Good opener. I wouldn't say it's a great opener, but it works well. Black and White People is one of the standouts on here. The horns are bringing a lot to the proceedings. It's adding a lot to that sunny feel on here. You got a wonderful chorus. You have the guitars on here, but again, it's the horns that are really adding more to the song. It's very cool. Crutch rocks a little harder. You got a nice musical bridge on here. You have a guitar solo, which is good, but it's getting buried a little bit by that everything but the kitchen sink production on it. But again, good track. We're starting out very good. Last Beautiful Girl definitely has more of a pop feel. This was the fourth single. It sounds like it would have been great on adult contemporary radio, but it didn't chart there in the States. It's very, very poppy, more acoustic, catchy. It's decent. Fifth song is If You're Gone, second single from the album, hit number 5 in the United States. It's a ballad that works like a charm. It still sounds great. I love Rob's vocal performance on here. He sounds very reflective in the verses, anthemic in the choruses. The chorus on here is wonderful. The horns work perfectly. We have a lot of accompaniment on this album. Sometimes it works very well, and sometimes it's just too much. Here, it complements the song very well. The pre-chorus is wonderful. Everything on this track works. And the horn solo instead of a guitar solo works very well. Love this song. Next, we go into the title song. Just more of an R&B feel, and not just because of the horns in there and its construction. It feels the more hard-hitting 60s R&B. It's a pretty cool track. It would hit number 48 here in the States. Next, we have the song Rest Stop. Now, at this point, more often than not, the album drifts. We get into a lot of ballads written by Rob Thomas, very mid-tempo. The thing that might jump out to you on these is the lyrics are more mature, as I mentioned before, songs of love and long lost love. And there might be an instrument here that makes it different from another ballad on the album. You get a lot of this on the second half. Ditto with the song The Burn. It's pleasant, nice piano line, production's really heavy on it. Okay. Bent, the standout of the second side, in my opinion, the standout of the album. And I said a lot of nice things about If You're Gone. Bent was the first single, which is interesting that it was listed as track 9 on this album, 13-track album. Bent to me is everything that's great about Matchbox 20. You've got that great hook and that searing guitar line. You got the mellow verses that work well. Rob sounds great on here. Fantastic chorus that just jumps right out at you. You have a nice bridge on here before it kicks back in to that searing guitar line. And I love how this bounces between like a little tribal feel and a mellow feel. Everything on this song works. Maybe my favorite song by Matchbox 20. And that's saying a lot because I like a lot off of these first 2 albums and a third album as well. Bent is a great track. And from here, Better Lies, again, like Rest Stop and The Burn, another mid-tempo acoustic song, ballad feel. It's all right. Leave is the same thing. We got orchestra flourishes going in and out. The sequencing's a little weird on this album. It's definitely front-loaded outside the song Bent. It becomes very, very adult contempo on this second half. Now, Stop, we got some life. We got that Gotta Get Up chorus, which works well. I don't think this is as strong as we had on those first 6 songs or Bent, but at least we're getting a change of pace here. And then we end it with You Won't Be Mine. And You Won't Be Mine is a piano ballad, which is augmented by an orchestra, and it just sounds bloated. I don't think it works well as a closer. I think we want something a little more triumphant. And what happens is, like a lot of albums from the 90s and 2000s, and I've said many times how I'm not a fan of this, it ends, and then you get 2-3 minutes of silence, and then it comes back. But this time, it's just the orchestra. And it just sounds too bombastic for my taste. I don't think it's a good way to end the album. What we have here is a strong album. And in the last several, for the first half, and then the last several songs, with the exception of Bent, it loses a lot of steam and momentum. But what works here is very, very good. So, who wins the album war today? Between Mad Seasons Above and Matchbox 20's Mad Season. This, I like 7 tracks on here a lot, and the rest are okay. This, I like all the way through. It drifts a little bit in the middle, but it is a very strong album. So, 6.5 for Matchbox 20's Mad Season, 8.5 for Mad Seasons Above. Mad Seasons Above wins today's album war. So, thank you so much for joining me today. Which of these albums would you prefer in today's album war? Do you like the music by these bands? What are your favorite tracks by these bands? And who do you think wins? Please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me today. Do what you love, and I'll talk to you soon.